Aloha, welcome back to Aina Bear Farm. I'm going to give you an update on how things are going during the dry season here on the big island of Hawaii. So I'm standing right here in front of a patch in our yard. This is where the dog stands when he's waiting for you to throw his ball to him. So he's torn up the grass quite a bit. So this kind of gives you an idea of how the soil looks when it's not covered and there's really no moisture. You can see some of the roots of this magnolia exposed, but sort of sandy, rocky, volcanic soil. I got some of these bigger chunks in here. And then it's very hard down about a quarter inch or so. It starts to feel like concrete almost. So tropical sun beating down on uncovered ground for long periods of time, not a good thing. We want to get that covered up. So let's take a walk around and just talk about how some other things are going on the farm and how we're dealing with it and moving forward. Here we're taking a look at some comfrey. Comfrey is a really good indicator plant for how dry your soil is because it will start to wilt a lot sooner than some of your other plants, certainly your fruit trees, and just kind of let you know that, hey, things are drying out down here. And what you can see here is like this was the older flush of leaves that really dried out quite a bit. They died back, and then once we finally got a little bit of rain recently, it's shooting up new growth. These leaves are just like very tender, full of water. So when they dry out, all that water kind of tends to be conserved in the root, and then the top part of the plant dies back, and then when the rain comes, they send up a flush of new growth. But just one other use for this amazing plant as a kind of dryness indicator for your soil. So we shot a video back before summer called Preparing for the Drought. And we talked about a lot of the different things that we do to get ready for the dry season, which typically where we are runs starting around June and really typically runs through October. So it's kind of a long dry season, and most years we still get enough rain for it to not be too big of a deal. But there's some years where we get very little measurable rain during that period. This year's been a little bit of a mixed bag, not too bad. June, July. July was actually a pretty good amount of moisture. And then we went all of August with no measurable rain, and the first week of September or so with no measurable rain. So a little over a month with, but when I say no measurable, I mean like maybe 1/10 of an inch, a little sprinkle here and there, but nothing that was really going to sustain our fruit trees or anything like that. And then just finally the other day we got almost a full inch in less than an hour, so we got a downpour, which is not the best delivery for water, but at this point we'll definitely take it. And so as I pan over, we can see this jackfruit tree has lost quite a few of its leaves. A little hard to see up in that upper canopy. You can see some of the barer branches down below, but you can definitely see the leaf litter on the ground. So obviously in the tropics we don't really have a fall season like in the continental US and other parts of the world, temperate regions, where you have a lot of deciduous trees drop leaves all at once. And here, trees typically, they'll produce new growth at the tips or whatever, and then as the new growth comes out, the older growth starts to die back. And it's sort of a slower process. They just drop that older growth here and there. This is what happens when you get a dry period. It will drop quite a bit of leaves all at once as a way of just kind of lowering the stress on the tree. It's not trying to support as many leaves. And you probably notice some fungal rings on here too, which is also, I've noticed with jackfruit, is just a sign of stress in the sense that I don't really need to treat it. It will resolve on its own once the tree starts getting adequate moisture again. But that is something interesting that we notice. And really, as soon as it starts getting regular moisture again, this thing will leaf back out and look great. Probably slows it down a little bit. And then in terms of fruiting, I'm not 100% sure yet. Got one tiny little flower on here right now. But so far we haven't had any fruit hang on, and I know that a tree would, jettison any fruit that it can't support. But as the root structure gets more substantial on our fruit trees, the more likely it is that they'll be able to hang on to fruit even in dry periods. So we shall see. You can see the pasture grass has stayed pretty green, produced a considerable amount of growth even during the dry period. So that's great. This just gives us more mulch, more organic material that we can add to our soil that'll help us lock in moisture more and more as we go. So we did have to water 2 times during that long dry spell where we didn't get any rain. And if you haven't watched videos of ours before where we talk about it, our system out here is not really built for irrigation. The scale of it and the chaos of it. We don't have straight lines. It would just be a massive undertaking, and then the way that we have to cut a lot of this grass around, we'd be running over irrigation lines, all this stuff. So at least for now, we've decided to leave most of it to nature in the rainfall. We do get adequate annual rainfall here. It's just that it comes off and on in a wet and a dry season. So we just know that during that dry season, we're going to have to water at times. So we're literally standing out here with long hoses, just drenching around the base of fruit trees like this black sapote. And I wanted to kind of focus in on this just to show that, even during this long dry period, you can see a tremendous amount of growth here, like this green shoot all the way up. 1.5 foot of new growth there. This kind of brighter green growth up at the top and at the ends of all the branches. And so, despite being in a drier period, the black sapote and many other trees will do just fine sending up new growth as long as we do provide some supplemental water to the rainfall that we get. Okay, here we are standing by one of our fruit trees. This is a rare Annona called Invira Caju. We got from Joe Hewitt. And despite a little bit of tip damage, a lot of nice new growth at the top, this tree's doing pretty well actually. But I wanted to look at a couple of things that we did to ensure moisture retention over this period of drought. Of course, we've got this heavy layer of mulch. A lot of this is the guinea grass that we cut, and as I peel it back, you can see moisture under there. If we kind of get in close, you can see the white mycelium, some root hairs down in there, all kinds of good stuff that's indicative of moisture being present. Some bigger organic material, there's moisture down in here. And then this is what I really wanted to look at. This is a piece of banana trunk. So this one I haven't done much with. Now I'm actually like slicing these open when I place them down to just allow insects and things to get in a lot faster and easier. But as I peel this back, there's still so much moisture in here. These things just they're almost like little irrigation systems themselves. So that will just continue to release over time. And that's right up against these logs that form a ring around the tree, which of course act as a mulch covering the soil, but also just more of that organic material in contact with the wet soil, building fungal webs down under there, all of which are contributing to the long-term health of the tree. Got some jack bean around, and we don't really take care of these once we plant them. We just kind of let them go, and they provide a little more cover on the soil. They provide some more root structure in the ground that's nitrogen fixing, and if they die, those are just like carbon pathways in the soil that provide organic material. All these things just help to store water, because as you saw at the beginning of our video, our soil, if we're not filling it with organic material, it's just dust. I mean, dust and rocks. So we've got to really work hard to build this up if we can, so that we can get through these dry periods without constantly having to water. Another strategy we use here is trying to get some fast-growing shade in place. So we're standing here next to this larger monkey pod tree. Nitrogen fixer, goes up quick, puts up a lot of shade. You can see some shade-loving turmeric underneath there. Pan over, we've got a banana circle. So they're all kind of helping shade this middle area in here where we pile up debris and food waste and things, and then that moisture helps that break down, decompose, and feed the bananas. And then we've got pigeon pea, smaller nitrogen fixer, with a huge Mexican sunflower tithonia in the background. That thing's almost like 20 feet tall. And as we keep going, we're going to scramble through some brush here. Pigeon pea on this other side. This pigeon pea is all growing up around a little cacao that's hiding in here. They love the shade when they're small like that. And then we can also get the chop and drop from this pigeon pea. Get this nice organic material blanket on the ground. It'll hold moisture. So shade and chop and drop mulch there. And then back around the other side, you'll see this rambutan tree is starting to emerge above the canopy of the pigeon pea around it. And so it's really kind of reaching for the sun at this point. Its roots are probably pretty well established. We can probably start to cut back some of that tithonia, feed it to the rambutan, and not have to worry so much about providing shade for this guy anymore. So that's a nice success there. I'm going to wrap up the video in this spot. There's a few interesting things going on, but mainly I wanted to talk about this perennial peanut ground cover a little bit. If you've seen previous videos, you know we're trying to spread this to replace a lot of this guinea grass as our primary ground cover in an area that used to be pasture, and we're converting to food forest. So you can see the tarp we have down there to kill off the guinea grass. As we peel that back, we'll allow the perennial peanut to continue spreading down the hill there. Now, as I pan over a little bit, you can see this perennial peanut ground cover looking very lush over here because it's in the understory. Got belay here in the foreground, monkey pod, mamaki, gliricidia, all kinds of things that are giving some shade to this patch here. But as we get out in the sun, where we want the perennial peanut to continue to run, it's a little bit harder for it to get going during the dry season. And these pineapple slips are just here temporarily, so kind of ignore that. Satsuma tangerine here with a nice bit of fruit on that in the background, and a little wood ring around the tree. And like I said, we're trying to get the perennial peanut to spread downhill here. And so the issue here during these long dry spells is with how much surface area this perennial peanut covers, we can't really stand there with a hose and water. It's really not efficient in a lot of ways, but certainly with time, it would take forever to do that. And so we have been starting to use some lawn sprinklers, and particularly the rainbow type, that go back and forth like that and make the big spray that goes up and down with the arch rainbow shape. And that's been working really well. So we're excited to be able to use that now. The reason we couldn't before is because we didn't have large enough sections that needed the water, and we didn't want to be watering the guinea grass. That would obviously make it grow faster, give us more maintenance, and be a huge waste of water for us anyways. So we're looking forward to being able to spread this perennial peanut more, and that'll give us the ability to use that sprinkler system, and we can just turn that on for an hour and go do other things and then come back and move it. A little bit more of an efficient system for watering than what we've been doing so far. So that's about all for this drought update. We'll finish with a nice morning view of the ocean here. Hope you guys enjoyed the content, and as always, let us know if you have questions or comments, or if there's anything particularly you'd like to see, any updates you're curious about, or maybe like a specific thing you'd like us to focus on. And I would definitely be happy to consider that. Until then, we hope to see you back here soon at Ina Bear Farm. Aloha.